You're listening to the Seahawks Insiders.
Geno looks, going to lay it up over the top. Got a man out there. It is locking. He has got it. Touchdown, Seahawks.
Getting you ready for Seahawks football every Sunday.
Hurts drops back, has time, loads up, throws. A.J. Brown, the defense. It's intercepted. Does he keep his feet in? He does. Seahawks ball.
Presented by Delta, the official airline of the Seahawks. Now, here's your host, Jen Mueller.
We knew the Seahawks were going to face a test in Detroit. They certainly did. But John Boyle, that offense comes through with flying colors. I know that you wanted that one. I know that it would make a big difference in how you feel going into this week's game. I can't be upset by what I saw from the Seahawks in Detroit.
Yeah, I mean, look, it wasn't their best game. They were missing a lot of guys on defense. And I look, part of me is like, that's a good sign that expectations are high, that fans are upset about losing on the road to a really good team, missing half your starting defense. But I look at it as the offense was great. I am willing to give the defense a pass until we see it back to something close to full strength. At some point this season, I do want to see that defense close to full strength going against a really good offense like Detroit's or whoever it may be. But I'm not going to make too many judgments on a game where the situation was just pretty weird for that defense.
Well, and you have some franchise-setting numbers.
Yeah.
I will be honest, by the way that the hustle boards are, so in case you're not familiar with that during the game, the hustle boards would be, where you're looking at total yards, rushing yards, passing yards, that sort of a thing. Every stadium does it differently. I couldn't find it in Detroit half the time. So when I look at the final numbers and I'm looking at 510 yards of offense, 16, excuse me, I shorted them 6 yards. That was like shocking to me.
Yeah, and 38 first downs. That's the most in franchise history in a game. So, and I think it was the most in the league in like a decade. So they did a lot of really good things. We saw Geno Smith, pass for career high in yardage and franchise records of completions. We saw Kenneth Walker really get going in the second half and get the run game going. So, yeah, I mean, I come out of that game being like, this team can really move the ball on just about anybody and is versatile on offense. And, again, look, coaches and players can't use injuries as an excuse. They can't say, oh, we were missing X, Y, and Z. That hurt us. Because, A, it makes the guys who are playing feel bad of like, oh, they don't trust us. And, B, then what do you say if those guys are out again this week?
Right.
It makes it sound like we don't trust anybody to get the job done. But an objective observer can look at this game and say, you're missing 5 of your best players up front, and then you lose Julian Love in the back end. And by the way, their 2 biggest explosive plays in the game happened after Julian Love left. I'm not saying for sure he stops that, but we just don't know.
We know that he is a high-level communicator back there, and we know that he is not only like a safety by position, but he is a safety valve just in the way that he plays.
Yeah.
You're right. You don't know if those plays would have happened or if they would have been shorter, if you would have, been able to hold them to a field goal. There's a lot of if, ands, buts, woulda, shoulda, couldas, that sort of thing. But going back to the offense, here's what I want to point out. The Seahawks have totaled more than 300 yards of offense in each of their 4 games this year. They're one of 6 teams in the NFL to do that. When you start to look at the numbers, they are averaging 39 passes a game. Now, John, that is amazing to me because we have seen some games in recent years where they have only had, 45 offensive plays in a game. So you are getting a significant just number of plays in the game. The 39 passes a game is surprising to me because it does not feel like this is a one-dimensional team. You still have Ken Walker contributing, and you are still calling run plays. It is one of the reasons why I asked Mike McDonald just about how he sees this offense being called right now.
Yeah, we're not shooting for a number of passes or whatever going into each game. I think it's just what it takes to be successful, trying to put our guys in best positions. I think Geno's operating the offense at a really high level where we're getting in and out of certain plays. That'll dictate some run or pass in certain situations. But I think the guys are confident. I think there's a lot of great execution out there. You've seen the O-line start to come together. So we're moving in the right direction. And we'll see, I'm not really worried about the pass play numbers right now. But, yeah, you're right. It just doesn't feel that many. I mean, the way this game played out, turned into a drop-back fest, which it needed to be, for us to have a chance to win the game. So some games kind of dictate those terms.
A couple things that stood out to me. One, I like that both Geno Smith, because he's, making adjustments at the line, but especially Ryan Grubb, your play caller, I don't feel like either of them are going to be, like, they're going to say, what's the defense doing, and here's how we attack it, and not, okay, we need to establish a run, so we're going to be stubborn and run it. That defense, they saw some opportunities in the passing game, and obviously it showed up in the numbers, so they went after it. I also I think there's this traditional notion of you run to set up the pass, and you run. And we've seen them do the opposite of okay, we're going to run like crazy or throw like crazy if that's what you're giving us. And then as you adjust, boom, Kenneth Walker has this big second half. So I think, both can help each other, complement each other, and doesn't necessarily have to be in the traditional order of we're going to run early.
And it is also worth noting that the Seahawks have gone 100 or more yards rushing in 3 of their 4 games played. The outlier was that game in New England, which was all just out of whack in general. So there's that. I went up to Ken Walker this week, and I apologized. I, first of all, felt terrible about the interview that I did post-game, not because he wasn't gracious, but I had a few more things to get to on my list. I totally forgot, including the front flip, the back flip, staying up, and getting the first down play. Yeah. You and I were talking about that, and we get on the bus, and I'm like, gosh darn it. It was on one page. Anyway, it doesn't matter.
She didn't say gosh darn it.
I did say gosh darn it. So I walk up to Ken in the locker room this week, and I'm like, I am so sorry I didn't ask you about that play. And he looked at me and goes, oh yeah, I totally forgot about that one. And I'm like, you, there's no way. So if I would have asked you about this after the game, he goes, well, no, I would have, if you would have asked me about it, sure, I would have talked about it. I was like, okay, so in the moment, did you know that you've front flipped, back flipped, and that you weren't down? He goes, of course. Why do you think I kept moving? Yeah. I knew that I could get the first down. And I was like, okay, I'm sorry, and maybe I'm glad that we didn't have this conversation on the record. But anyway, yes, it was pretty impressive.
I had a similar conversation. I was like, could you tell what was happening as that was going on, or were you just kind of throwing your body around? He's like, no, I knew, and I knew I wasn't down, so I got up. He did say, he's like, he was pleasantly surprised that they didn't blow it dead, just because it looked like the kind of play where, he must be down. So he was glad that they gave him a chance to make what was one of the stranger plays I've ever seen in a football game.
And I really wish that it happened on the Seahawks sideline, because it was far sideline. So you're kind of going, wait a minute, what? And you're looking at the replay, but...
Well, can you imagine the reaction if he did that right in front of his own sideline?
Yeah.
It would have been fun.
It is. He is incredibly strong, and I'm really glad that he is back on the field.
Remember week 1, he flipped the dude trying to tackle him.
I know.
Yeah.
I know. I can't.
He's pulling
I can't
off
wait
some
to
wild
see.
moves this year.
Maybe he's just trying for his own personal best highlight reel.
Maybe.
Probably. Meanwhile, things on the defensive side of things. Well, look, I don't even know what to make of it, because, as you pointed out, you finished the game down 6 starters on defense. So, do you like 42 points given up? No, you don't. But you still had some pretty big plays. Overall, though, Mike McDonald, he is the one that is going to step up and take responsibility for this.
Look, whatever shows up on tape is my responsibility. At the end of the day, I'm responsible for what goes on out there. And our guys are fighting their tails off to go do it. No player is ever going to show up and want to do it the wrong way. Everybody wants to win. Everybody wants to be productive. Everybody wants to have success. The secret sauce is when you can get it when you can get it playing together, and they're playing for one another, and they're excited for everybody else's success. I think, that's what we're building, and that's what we're trying to create. And I think I have to do my part to make that happen.
That was in response to a question about him, talking about mistakes, but not naming individual players. You can talk about, a tackle was missed or a blown assignment, but he doesn't say so-and-so did this. And it's interesting, because that was something Pete Carroll did really well as well. In all the years we covered him, you almost never heard him, in a negative sense, name a player about a play. And I think that's a really good take for a coach to be like, look, a player might have messed up on that play individually, but it was our job all week to get him ready to make that play. Either to get him the fundamentals right to make the tackle back in training camp, or to scheme him to be in the right spot here. So ultimately, when you're the head coach, as Mike McDonald said, he has to answer for it. So I like that. I mean, just overall, bigger picture, I really like what we've been hearing from Mike McDonald after the game, on Monday when he did his radio show, now on Wednesday. We didn't know. This was his first loss as a head coach. You just never know how he's going to take it. And I think, he's mixed in accountability with finding kind of the bright spot in it and not overreacting. So I really like how he's handled his first loss as a head coach.
Do you think the culture has changed, or it's just the coaching staff has changed? Because I think you and I have talked about this before, but now that you're 4 games in, we have a better picture of what this actually looks like during the season. And people keep talking to me about it. They're like, the culture's changed. The culture's changed.
Yeah.
I don't think the culture's changed.
Yeah, he puts his own spin on things, and he coaches the team a little differently, and players might respond to things differently. But bigger picture culture, there's still a lot of overlap. And the day they hired him, he talked about that of like, he knew he was stepping into a really good situation with what Pete and John had built, what really going back to Paul Allen buying the team, like what the culture in this building has been for decades has been really strong. And he understood, like, I don't need to come in and blow it all up. I'm going to come be myself and coach football the way I know how to coach football, but also embrace what's been here already.
And this week, he is coaching the defense towards getting those takeaways, something that we have not seen since week 1. Now, I will tell you that the numbers for the Giants could make this a little bit difficult, but here is how Mike McDonald wants to see them get better.
How can we get incrementally better in all the processes, coaches, how we organize things, how we walk through players, how we take meetings, how we communicate in meetings? Just how can we take incremental steps throughout the week, to put ourselves in position mentally so we can go out and play our best football. And then in game, how we're communicating as coaches, how we adjust, all those things. I mean, all those things are on the table. We've talked about them. Unfortunately, it's just this is creating an opportunity for us to really face those things head on, and that's what we're going to do.
Yeah, and again, this goes back to how is he handling this first loss? How will the team handle it? And it's still early in the week when we heard from Mike the first time, so he maybe doesn't have a great feel for his players and how they're doing it yet. But I think to his point, like if we stay consistent in our messaging and how we do things, no one's panicking about what happened on Monday. They wanted to win that game, of course, but it didn't go their way, and they're looking to just sort of stay the course, do what got them their first 3 wins, and just look to improve.
Yeah, but like I mentioned, some of those Giants numbers is going to make it tough for the defense to do the things and to have the game-changing plays that they want to have. We know the quarterback, Daniel Jones. We know that he is working behind a retooled offensive line. The Giants bring in 3 veterans. As a result, he has been pressured a career low 34% of the time. Prior to this, in 4 of his first 5 seasons, it was 40% or higher. So as a result, he is staying upright. But John, most of his yards are coming through these short, quick passes. He is not completing things deep downfield. So where are you going to get the takeaways from this week?
Yeah, I mean, as Mike McDonald told us, like that's you can't consistently win football games losing the turnover battle, and they want to start getting those. They had 3 the first game and none since. So, they got to figure out ways. I mean, the pass rush for the Seahawks, especially when they were healthy, has been really good. They have one of the highest pressure rates in the league. So I would have a hunch they feel like even against a good O-line, they'll take their chances that they can get after the quarterback some and hopefully force Daniel Jones into some bad decisions. But also, there's got to be opportunities where you got to look for a chance to get the ball out. We've seen there's been some close moments where you watch play like, oh man, whether it's Spoon or whoever coming in and just missing the punch. So they're going to keep trying to find their ways to get it out.
Yeah, well, so here's kind of part of it is Daniel Jones has been forced to throw the ball because they don't have much of a run game.
Yeah,
and the just over a yard averaged against Dallas a week ago did not help their overall average, which is one of the lowest in the league. I think they're at 3.4 yards a carry. So if the ground game isn't going, he's going to have to go through the air. Now, I don't know if you watched the end of that Dallas game, but I thought the play calling was baffling. And I never say this about coaches because I don't know everything in the game plan. But you could tell when he was trying to get the ball downfield, that wasn't his style, right? In fact, Daniel Jones has only completed 2 of 13 attempted passes where it has gone more than 20 yards in the air. Now, think about how great Geno throws that deep ball. That's not going to be Daniel Jones' strength. However, he is tied for Lamar Jackson with the most completions, 36, of over 10 yards. So when you start going into that short, quick game, now you are finding success, although they could be without their top receiver.
I was going to say, it'll be a big question mark is whether they have Malik Neighbors, who's just been outstanding as a rookie, but unfortunately suffered a concussion last week. So got to see if he's back because, he's been a huge part of their passing game so far.
You know what? If we are going to talk about wide receivers, I think it is time to take a quick break and to bring in our fantasy insider, Scott Engel.
Thanks, Jen and John, and welcome to Week 5 of fantasy football with 4 teams on a bye. We have to give you those streamers, and we start with Jackson Smith-Njigba of the Seahawks on the field for 84% of the snaps last week. Continued opportunity will lead to continued production. Also, Cortland Sutton of the Denver Broncos catching his first touchdown pass of the season last week against the tough New York Jets secondary, like them against Las Vegas this week. At running back, Kareem Hunt emerging as the number one running back for the powerful Kansas City Chiefs offense, which should start to rebound and be potent again under Patrick Mahomes. Go to Seahawks.com, go to the Fantasy Insider page under the news tab, and find out why you should still have confidence in Mahomes as a fantasy player. Also at running back, Chuba Hubbard of the Carolina Panthers. Last 2 weeks, 100-plus rushing yards in each game and 2 TDs from scrimmage. At tight end, we're all scrambling for help. Take a shot on Tyler Conklin of the New York Jets against his former team, the Minnesota Vikings, who ranked 28th in fantasy points per game allowed to tight ends. For more of my work, check me out at rotoballer.com and also on The Athletic. Back to you, Jen and John, for Week 5, Seahawks and Giants.
Thank you, Scott. Okay, Seahawks wide receivers, Seahawks offensive scheme. Does it get better than JSN and Zach Charbonnet combining for a trick play in Week 4?
Oh, that was so fun.
That was so fun. In Week 4.
Yeah.
And they've had that in their back pocket for weeks.
Yeah. I think some people are like, oh, they're copying the Lions because the Lions did a somewhat similar. It's like, no, they've been working on that longer than that. It's every team has different variations of those plays, but it just looks so like it wasn't like some trick plays they developed slowly and you're like, oh, what's going to happen? But that was just like they made it look routine.
It was pretty impressive. And also, when that play gets called, you get one shot to execute that.
Yeah.
You don't execute it, that's it. Like, you can't run that play again because now you've already shown it. I say that. Maybe they could. I don't know. But generally, with a play like that, you don't show it again. So if that is not a successful play, well, not only did you just kind of waste a down on that one, but you wasted the chance for that.
Yeah, you got to capitalize on those. So unfortunately, they did not score on the drive, but that did help flip the field and late in the half. So it still probably helped them avoid, giving the ball back too early, anything like that. Because it was, 3rd and 16?
I don't remember what it was.
That's a low percentage play, but they sure made it look easy.
They figured it out. Is Jackson Smith-Njigba or DK Metcalf the better wide receiver right now?
I mean, they're both really good. I'm going to give the nod to DK. I mean, the guys, they're both. I don't want this to sound like I'm saying one guy's not good, but like DK Metcalf is on that level of like, he's just a huge problem for every NFL defense. You see teams scheming specifically to stop him, and he's still got 3 straight 100-yard games, which, by the way, no one's done that in franchise history.
Okay, so we were
not
talking
the Hall of
about
Famer
this
Steve
last
Largent,
week. I know. How is this possible?
Who retired as the all-time leading receiver in NFL history when he left the game in, I think it was 1990? I'm drawing a blank on my year. But anyway, my point is, Steve Largent, all-time great, never had 3 straight 100-yard games. DK Metcalf just did it the last 3 weeks.
Now, here's what I think I might end up to be wrong on. And also, I did intentionally set you up to pick one over the other just to see what would happen. I would say JSN, and I know that he has always been kind of that shifty slot guy, but what I saw on Monday night, it just feels like he is, I don't know if he's even more competitive there, or if he's even smoother, but there's something different to his game where, look, I'm not saying Tyler Lockett's not a factor, but I really do like the youngster working inside and keeping Tyler on the outside more. I mean, you're going to have to save those plays to Tyler.
And he's also, what Jason's doing on 3rd down, he's just like so many 3rd downs he's picking up where he maybe doesn't have as many big plays over the course of a game, but he's a guy that Geno Smith has figured out he can really make things happen on these 3rd down conversions.
Yes. But here's where I might be wrong. When people were asking me who's going to be like the top offensive player and they want fantasy advice, which, by the way, I do not give, Scott Engel gives. I defer to Scott. I said, look, I don't know that I would pick any wide receiver because there's so many options and so many tools. I think that the yards are just going to get spread around too much. I think I might be wrong on that. Now, I know that we're only 4 games in. I think I might be wrong based on what DK is doing.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see over the course of the season how it plays out. But yeah, well, he seems to be taking his game to another level where, and maybe some of this is the play caller too of Ryan Grubb and Geno Smith just looking like, hey, this guy's too good not to feed the ball to X number of times a game. But again, like if teams are trying to take that away, we've seen games where there's a lot of attention on him, and that's when the other guys might feast, which, again, from the fantasy standpoint might be tricky because some teams have like a clear number one and that's all they go to, and the guy's going to get 15 targets no matter what. Whereas there's going to be games that DK Metcalf might be a little more quiet, but man, he's been He's been phenomenal so far.
Well, he can be quiet, and all it takes is one deep shot for 70 yards,
Yeah.
and suddenly he's right back up there at the top
Exactly.
of the stat sheet. So I'm not worried about it. I just find it really curious.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. We'll continue to watch those numbers. We're going to give you a couple of numbers and things that we need to see right after this word from our presenting sponsor.
Statistically, the world is losing color. Just consider all-white kitchens, beige baby nurseries, a sea of gray cars. But in the hundreds of destinations Delta flies to, you can rediscover color in the bright blue waters of Hawaii, the emerald green hills of Scotland, the berry pink cherry blossoms of Tokyo, and so much more. Sometimes opening your world is all it takes to open your mind, which is why when you fly Delta, your potential takes off when you do. Delta, official airline of the Seattle Seahawks.
All right, John, we have reached that point in the podcast where I need the two things that you need to see on Sunday for a Seahawks win. What do we got?
We talked about it earlier. I want to get those turnovers.
Yeah.
I'm going to be greedy here and say the Seahawks are currently -3 this season. I want them to get all the way back to even. I want them to win the turnover battle by 3.
By 3?
Yeah, like I said, I'm getting greedy.
Oh,
but
okay.
yeah, maybe that's we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Okay.
But especially if you get ahead and
Yep.
put them in a bad spot, I
like
think you
that.
can do that. The other one, when you look, the Giants have struggled in a lot of areas. They're 1-3, but their defensive front is pretty nasty. They got some guys that can really get after it. Dexter Lawrence, one of the best interior linemen in the NFL. So offensive line is coming off a strong performance, especially when you consider 56 dropbacks. Like, that's tough to block. I want to see the offensive line, continue to progress and keep Geno Smith clean and minimize the hits that he takes.
You know what that defense is really good at doing? Keeping points off the board. In fact, they are among the best at red zone defense, allowing opponents to score just about 40% of the time that they are inside the 20. So for the Seahawks, I want to see points on the board. I'm not even going to say it's settling if you kick a field goal, but you got to get points on the board and maximize those opportunities. The other part for the Seahawks defense, this might be greedy on my part. I want to see a season low in rushing yards allowed, which is a little tricky because it was only 65 against Miami. But make this team one-dimensional, and then that feeds into your turnover point, and I think that all comes out
There we go.
pretty well. Well, great. We've schemed this up perfectly.
Yeah.
I think if you listen to us, you're going to
Mike's going to put on this podcast and be
this
like,
is
I'm
gonna
taking
be
the rest of the
great.
week off.
I mean, we just saved the coaches so much
Yeah,
time.
wow.
Score in the red zone and get the ball.
Yeah.
This seems brilliant. I'm sure that you agree, and I'm sure that you will be back next week for a brand new edition of the Seahawks Insiders Podcast.